Hey, what is going on, everybody? So I'm out here for sunrise, and basically all I'm gonna do is be sharing with you my favorite settings for video for the DJI Mavic 3. So to keep this video as short and as simple as possible, I'm just gonna get my drone out, gonna set up my controller onto my phone, and then I'm gonna start screen recording on my phone, and then I'm gonna just get straight into the settings. So from here, once you get your drone opened up, once you get your phone plugged in, basically all you're gonna do is click go fly. And then from here, it looks like the last time I was shooting in photo mode. So I'm gonna push this button right here, and it's just gonna swap it over to video mode. And then from here, we can really dive into the settings. So first things first though, we're gonna go over here to camera, and we're gonna switch some of these settings. Now these settings are gonna be more so the look of your videos, not so much the actual exposures that we'll get into here in a second. But for right now, we're just gonna go for the look. Now, as far as color, the best color to film in is D-Log. This is drone log or DJI log. And basically log is gonna give you a flattened version of the image. The shadows are gonna be a little bit brighter and your highlights are gonna be a little bit less exposed. And what this is gonna do is it's just gonna make it a lot easier to color grade here in post. So I always shoot in D-Log. And then I also always do color display assist. And what this is gonna do, it's gonna just add some more contrast to your image. So it's gonna show you what your image is gonna look like after you color grade. Because if I have it deselected, it gives me this D-Log image, which is a super flat, washed out, unsaturated image, which is not what I wanna be looking at the entire time that I'm flying. So in order to counteract that, we just put on color display assist. And again, it's not gonna film in this version, it's gonna film in D-Log, so just be aware of that. So next we're gonna go to the coding format. I shoot in H.265. This is a little bit of an uncompressed video, where H.264 is a compressed video. And basically what that means is compressed means you're compressing more information into a smaller file size, where uncompressed is basically you're just getting all of the information possible that the video is gonna be recording, except it's gonna be a lot larger of a file size. And I don't really mind large file sizes, so I'm gonna definitely keep shooting in H.265. Format, I always shoot in MP4. I personally like MP4 better than MOV. There's not a ton of difference there, but I always shoot in MP4. And my bitrate is just locked at CBR. Now video subtitles is kind of a personal preference thing. I personally have it turned on. And then anti-flicker is not something that I usually need to worry about because most of what I'm doing is landscape stuff and there's not a whole lot of fluorescent lights. Anti-flicker is available there though, so just keep that in mind. Histogram is basically just gonna show you your exposure levels so you can see kind of your white balance and what your video is going to look like when it is in log. Log histograms are a little bit weird, so I always just kind of turn that off because I'm going to be able to look at it when I do edit my videos in post. So I don't really worry about that. Overexposure warning, basically this is just going to be the zebra stripe, so when I turn that on, you can see all of the areas that are overexposed, so the whole sky is blown out right here, of course. But I personally don't like that. I think it's a little bit distracting, but it is kind of a personal preference, so that is up to you. Grid lines, I feel the same way about. It is a personal preference. If you like the grid lines to help you frame your shots, that is definitely something you can turn on. But I personally just think they're a little bit annoying, so I like to have them turned off. Frame guide is another thing that I just have turned off. It's another thing that's just a little bit annoying, but basically you can just see what your final ratio is. If you're filming more of a cinematic video, that is going to have a specific crop. So for instance, you can get these crop lines in it. I personally don't have that on. I'm always filming in 16:9 and all of my videos are edited in 16:9, so I don't really worry about that. And peaking level is basically going to show you little dots that are in focus, but personally I just keep that off. It's another one of those things that I find just a little bit annoying to deal with, so I just leave that off. My white balance, the best way to do this is to shoot auto white balance, and then once the white balance has automatically set, switch it over to manual, just because that's gonna lock in your white balance, and then when you're filming, it's not gonna change and be kind of all over the place as you're moving through different scenes. So I find the best way, or the best thing to do, is just to have auto white balance, set it up, find your shot, and then click manual white balance. It's just gonna make it a little bit easier, and your shots are not gonna be as like kind of all over the place in terms of color. Next thing is cache while recording. Basically, this is just gonna save videos to your phone and I don't want videos on my phone because I want to be able to edit them first, so I always turn that off. And then there's options to reset your camera settings, and the other panels up here are more about flight controls, you know, your safeties, and that's not really what we're dealing with today. Now these settings can be a little bit confusing at first, but once you understand manual mode and once you understand how to balance each of these settings, it does get pretty simple. So the best possible settings that you can film at is 5K, and I like to film at 50 frames a second because I personally prefer to be able to slow down my clips later on. If I was filming at 30 frames a second and I was editing in a 30 frames timeline, I wouldn't be able to slow down my clips very much. So this way I can slow down my clips close to 50%, not exactly 15%, but I can slow them down close to that. So I like to film in that. And then as we talked about before, I like to film in D-Log at H.265. Next up, we're just gonna jump into the ISO aperture and shutter speed. Personally, I like to balance my bucket. If I'm filming at 50 frames per second, which I just showed you I was, my shutter speed has to be at least 1/100. This just allows me to basically slow down my videos and I don't get weird motion blur in my videos or weird choppy footage. So be sure and always double your shutter speed when you're filming. Next up is ISO. ISO is locked here at 400 for me. So instead of that, you're just gonna have to change your aperture. Ideally, you want your MM to be around +1 to +1.7. The only reason you want it to be there is because you're filming in D-Log. So log footage is a little bit easier to color grade when it is overexposed. And so that's why I would recommend having that to be a little bit overexposed. But other than that, that's pretty much all of the video settings that there are for the Mavic 3. If you guys have any questions or think there's anything I didn't cover that you would like answered, please leave those comments down below. But anyways, I appreciate you guys watching. I have another video up about the best photo settings, so please go check that one out too if you would like to learn about that. But other than that, I will see you guys in the next video. All right, peace.